Welcome to today's digital content marketing webinar. We have an awesome lineup of panelists that are very eager to share some of their best marketing secrets in order to help you continue to plan and grow your business. I am Will Jurgensen, the Director of Client Experience at Keystone Click, your facilitator for today's panel discussion. Our agenda includes a quick introduction of our panelists and questions broken up into three categories. These categories include, first and foremost, trends they are seeing today, the best practices that they are going to relay to you, as well as potentially some inside secrets they may have. And we're going to polish it off with what the future has in store. After all of those three, we're going to open up questions to those in attendance. So if you have a question, please use the chat and/or the Q&A feature to submit your questions. And we will review all those questions at that designated time during our panel discussion. So without any further ado, let's meet our panelists. We are going to kick things off with Stephen Woessner. Stephen is the CEO of Predictive ROI and the host of Onward Nation podcast, which is listened to in over 100 countries. His virtual agency helps clients strategize and execute their thought leadership plan. Stephen, welcome to today's panel.
Thanks very much for having me. I appreciate the invitation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Up next, we have Brad Gillum. Brad is the CEO of Willow Marketing, serving B2B clients, member-based organizations, and family-owned, closely held businesses throughout the United States. Their agency is located in Indianapolis, Indiana. Brad, how's Indiana?
Warm but rainy today. Well, you're doing a great job. I think you could host the dating game someday.
Nice. Very good. Very good. This is how careers get started here, Brad. There's no question.
Career goals, yes.
Absolutely. Perfect. All right, let's keep moving. Ann Pruitt. Ann is the owner of Mosaic, an agency focused on media placement strategy and execution. Located in Anchorage, Alaska, her firm serves clients across the entire United States. Ann, welcome from Alaska.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. And lastly, let's round it out with Lori Highby. Lori is the president of Keystone Click, a strategic digital marketing agency serving B2B industrial manufacturers and professional service organizations across the United States. Her agency is located in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Lori, how are you?
I'm excited it's Friday and ready to share some great insights with everyone.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, I tell you what, without any further ado, let's get right into it. Let's start the conversation with changes and trends that we are seeing related to recent events. So Ann, let's start with you. What are some changes and/or trends that you have seen in the media buying as a response to COVID-19?
What I'd like to do is break it down by just consumer trends as well as advertiser trends. We have seen media consumption at an all-time high. We're talking 9/11 numbers when it comes to news. We're talking an increase in digital. Social media is up 41%. Online video is up 39%. Streaming TV is up 38%. So that there's a lot of things in that of where we're seeing on the consumer side. On the advertiser side, however, we're seeing significant drops in advertising dollars being placed. So nationally, we're seeing a decrease of about 70% of advertising dollars being spent. We expect that to continue. We expect that to be in that mindset, and that's where advertisers are. And by the end of April, we were seeing advertisers starting to reassess some things, but now we're really seeing that they're pushing that a little bit further. So there's some opportunities for individuals that have ad spend right now of what they can do. And it's interesting because the consumer and the consumption of media is high, but the clients and advertisers' dollars are lower. So it's when we have these consumers and when they are primed to be spoken to right now, advertisers are nervous to spend the money. So it's an interesting balance that we're seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you touched on it just a little bit, but I do want to kind of follow up with what recommendations you might have for clients who are unsure whether to continue ad buys or who are wondering if their ad tactics should change due to COVID-19.
Absolutely. There are opportunities in this, in the sense that we've seen from past downturns with 9/11 and in 08 and 09, that the companies that actually stayed a steady stream in their advertising dollars they had a better recovery than those that completely pulled back. Our suggestions right now and the opportunities that we have is pulling back from certain media tactics. So print and out of home, that's what you want to pull out of, and you want to increase your digital consumption. One thing that's really interesting in those trends is the generational breakdown of what we're seeing. We're seeing baby boomers, their TV news has gone up, but their digital consumption has gone through the roof. We haven't really seen that bolster of a boost in a while. And millennials, digital. Gen Z, it's been all digital and video game consumption. That's what we're seeing. Podcasts are up. Everything is up in that sense. So the opportunities are there for you as an advertiser. Don't go away completely. Find new tactics that you can use. Digital is an affordable tactic to use during this time. Going completely away, we've seen in history that will actually hurt you in your recovery in the long term.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much, Marianne. That was awesome.
Absolutely.
Let's move to Brad. Brad, how has COVID-19 impacted the membership and association space?
Yeah, great question. Well, this week's been kind of a big week for those in the association world. ASAE, which is the American Society for Association Executives, or the Association for Associations, if you will, canceled their upcoming event in August. So their large annual meeting has, the live event's been canceled, and they're moving everything to virtual. And I think we've all seen that happening. So our clients, those association clients, are pivoting right now to try to determine how they can deliver this member experience through other than live events. So are they doing virtual conferences? How is the learning being done? How is the peer-to-peer and mentoring being done? All of these member-based services that we all look to associations to help us with, we're now having to pivot and shift and deliver those member benefits in different ways. So we've been working with our clients to help them navigate some of those new ways that they're actually communicating with their members.
For sure. And so how should a business essentially kind of consider or begin that pivot process?
Yeah, I'm not sure that if you're beginning that process, it's probably too late. I'm hoping that I'm hoping that you've already been communicating with your customers, your clients, your prospects, and your members. If you're using now as the time to start that communication, it's probably a little bit too late. So I think it's more about what that messaging is and how you're speaking to your audiences. Right now is a time to simply be helpful. Now is a time to show up, be very authentic with them, to be as helpful as you possibly can, and being there to support them as they're walking through these difficult times, and not trying to sell them anything or convince them to buy something. So it's really shifting your messaging a bit, which I hope you've already been communicating with them and you're continuing to do so. It's simply changing that content and the messaging that you're sharing with them a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have no question that a number of people who are viewing today's panel discussion have done that. And that's some really great insight. Thank you, Brad. Really appreciate it. Stephen, let's move on to you, and let's begin with a category that you're very familiar with. So what are you seeing, if anything, that has been changing with regards to thought leadership?
I think this connects really well with what great advice that Brad just gave us around the context of content, and that is helping and not selling. And here's what I mean by that. Edelman, for I think the last 20 years, global PR firm, and for the last 20 years has really owned the word trust because of their annual trust barometer and all their studies that they've done around that word. And now more than ever, that word is more important. I mean, trust has always been important, but the special report that they did, a special coronavirus report that they released on March 16th, where they interviewed 12,000 people in 12 different countries, was really compelling around that even though trust is an important word, the importance of that word has been magnified because of COVID, if that's even possible, but yet it is possible. The data shows it very clear. And so what the 12,000 respondents said absolutely matches with what Brad just shared. And that is, this is the time to be helpful. This is the time to be helping and not selling, where 71% of the respondents, 71% of 12,000 people said that if they feel that a business is coming at them from a selfful or selfish or violates that trust in any sort of way, they'll never do business with that company again. 71% of 12,000 people. And 85% of 12,000 people said that they're looking to us to be their trusted advisor, their expert, their source of information because of this fake news, whatever the right word is, but because of fake news, the proliferation of fake news, 85% are looking to you to be the expert. So we need to step into those shoes that we rightfully own because they're asking us to. In fact, I would say that they're demanding that we do that. So I would encourage everybody who is joining us here right now to Google Edelman's special coronavirus report and download it. It's a free report off of their website, and it is awesome and very compelling.
Very cool. Yeah, that's phenomenal insight. And so I just kind of want to follow up with that, Stephen, as you speak about thought leadership and authority position, if having an authority position is more important today than it ever has been before, how does someone go about building that authority position?
Great question. Really, there's three elements, essentials, if you will, to creating an authority position or identifying and building that authority position. And my co-author and I, so I just recently wrote a book called Sell with Authority alongside Drew McClellan, the CEO of Agency Management Institute. And very interesting process because of how much research we did and then pulling from various AMI members, great success stories and so forth of agencies that are doing it really, really well. And so the three essentials are, first, you got to have a niche. You got to be focused on who it is that you want to serve, and being able, and you can do that in a few different ways. It could be an audience, it could be an industry, it could be an area of expertise, but you got to be niched. So that's the first piece. That's the first essential. Second piece is you got to have a strong point of view. And combining niche and point of view is what helps you establish that flag, that distinctiveness that separates you from this sea of competitors that we're all fighting against, every single day. So niche and point of view are very important. But then you really cement that flag or plant that flag in firm ground by having consistent cornerstone content. Going back to Brad's point, helping and not selling. How are you creating consistent cornerstone content, big meaty pieces of content that are truly helpful? That truly, yes, share your smarts with the audience in mind. How can you make them better on a weekly basis? And when you combine niche point of view with consistent cornerstone content, you have the right, you've earned that trust of authority, but it doesn't happen overnight.
It takes some time, you're telling me.
Well, it is completely unrealistic to think that, okay, I'm going to do this for this niche. This is my point of view, and I'm going to create 12 podcasts, and now I'm an authority in this space. Right. It doesn't happen fast. Now, that doesn't mean that it can't take, 6 months or 12 months or whatever, but this does take time. It's not a short fix or quick fix. It's not a get rich quick scheme. It is about putting the audience front and center and truly caring about them. Right. And making them better. And that takes time.
Absolutely. And consistency.
Of course.
Awesome. Very great. Very great. Let's round up our first question here with Lori. Lori, what are you seeing with search habits and search trends online during our current circumstances?
Yeah, great question. And I'm just going to note that my internet's been a little spotty, so hopefully we're not losing the awesome insights I'm sharing right now. But as we've heard a number of times, everything is up online. Email open rates are insanely high. Social media usage is insanely high right now. And that includes the search engine usage. Google actually submitted some data fairly recently about the type of information.
Oh no.
I wish that I could think for her. I've been trying very hard recently to think on her behalf, and it hasn't worked out well enough. We will definitely get Lori back in very shortly. But I tell you what, the show must go on. So let's continue to push forward, and we will certainly circle back with Lori and all of her great insights that she wants to make sure that she capitalizes on and shares with everyone. So let's move on here a little bit, and let's share some of our best practices and secrets. If you want to share secrets, that's completely up to our panelists here, related to your expertise. So Brad, we're going to bring it back to you. What are some recommendations for membership-based organizations to retain and grow their membership base right now?
Well, I don't know that it's any secret, but I think it's really crawling into the heads of your members. I mean, if you think about this, we're all going through some pretty traumatic times right now as individuals, as people. So, you know, we're teachers now at home. We're making sure that we're taking care of the family. We're all working from home. We're not able to really get out and do anything and see or network with other people. So there's an awful lot going on in our lives. So we actually have a survey that we're doing right now. That's an attitudinal survey for ASAE. The plans are to release that at the ASAE show, which will now be virtual. But asking members how COVID-19 has shifted some of the way that they're looking at membership. I mean, we have people who are losing jobs, who have been laid off or have been furloughed, who are probably looking for some of those professional associations so they can network and find a job, to find that next place for them to go. So for associations to be thinking from that perspective and being there to show up and be helpful in helping them to engage with and meet other people, now that we have a virtual world that we're living in, they're having to pivot and change to be able to provide those member benefits to those people. We're hoping that the survey that we're doing will be able to shed some light for those associations that are participating in it. We'll share it at ASAE as well, but should be able to have some great insights from that as to really understanding and appreciating how members have changed the way that they look and value membership. And with that, I'll turn it over to Lori, who's back.
Let's bring it on back.
Oh, yes.
You were in the middle of saying something extremely smart.
No question. Lori, let me tee it back up for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we really wanted to kind of round out our first section with you giving us some insight into what you are seeing with search habits and search trends online.
Sure. So Google shared some research actually with regards to the type of search activity that's happening in the last 6 to 8 weeks online. And just like every other digital platform, email, social media, usage overall is insanely high. They put their data into 5 different buckets of types of information that people are actually searching. So I'd recommend, paying attention to this to identify if there's any opportunities for you to be creating content based on the search intent that's taking place right now on Google. First, they're looking for any sort of critical information. This could be, personal and professional. So as simple as how do I suspend my mortgage payments right now, to home delivery options. Second, everyone's looking for new connections. I read that video searches are up 54% that include the phrase "with me" on it. So studying with me, cooking with me, something along those lines. And also looking for some sort of activity with, multiplayer games online. Everyone's their routines are adjusted significantly. So any sort of DIY activity has a significant increase in search right now. The fourth one, this one was actually somewhat interesting and also heartwarming, but there's a high volume of searches around how to praise your everyday heroes. And I just love that. And that just makes me feel good that people have really good intentions right now despite what's happening in the world. And that last one is all about taking care of yourself. So how can I relax? What are some activities that I can do at home? The website thinkwithgoogle.com has a fascinating tool right now that's tracking and showing all of consumer activities specifically related to this. And our website, keystoneclick.com/owner secrets, has a link to all of the resources that I just referenced and that are being referenced throughout this conversation today.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we will be sure to share that link as well in the chat as we continue to move forward. That's really great, Lori. Thank you so much. And so without further ado, we're going to continue into round two here. And Brad, thank you again so much for your insights. Really, really great stuff. I want to kind of just put you back on the hot seat here quickly and just ask you if you have any examples of any sort of membership-based organizations that you have seen do a really good job grow their membership base right now, and if there's anything kind of concrete that our viewers can, take with them.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I have a specific example of somebody growing their membership base right now, but one great example of one of our clients that has pivoted extremely well. They're actually an outdoor museum, a 1,700 acre park with interpreters. And as you can imagine, they've been shut down. So we've helped them to actually pivot to move some of their educational pieces in home. So we've used this as an opportunity to help even with some of the homeschooling, to talk about some of the animals that we have at Conner Prairie, or to show how to make some sourdough starters so that everybody in the family can start making some sourdough breads and how to do that. So really moving and pivoting to kind of move some of those materials to still engage with those members, the people who have paid for membership for Conner Prairie, and taking our information to them, taking it into the homes and really putting it in front of them so that they're still a part of what they're doing on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely. That was awesome. Thank you very much. Marianne, I know you've been hanging out in the background now for a little bit, so let's get right back to you and get you involved. You mentioned in your promo video that social media consumption is up 41%. I have heard recently a lot that advertising spend is down right now. So what are some best practices to maximize the high consumption rate from an ad spend perspective?
It's very interesting, like I had said at the beginning, that we have an all-time high of consumption, and our audiences are right there ready to take our brands and ready to take our messages, but customers and consumers and advertisers are just like, nope, we're going to cut back on our spend. And in reality, there are some very cost-effective pivots that you can look at. Number one, right now, go to your media vendors of traditional media and renegotiate some rates. Their spend is all-time low. Go look at them and say, you know what, I'm staying on, or I plan to come back on, but what can you do to help me out? But this is an opportunity to renegotiate that. Have a strong pivot to digital, meaning in the sense of what types of OTT are you looking at? Display, streaming video, YouTube, digital radio. We still see TV and radio consumptions high. So keep in that realm on a local level. People now, right after 9/11, we saw that news was consumed in a different way, and we're seeing that again. People want to see their morning news. They want to know that the world that they went to bed to is the same world that they're waking up to. So you have to keep that. That's something to look at what you're doing. If you're going to keep that traditional side, TV and radio is still a great place to be. Print and outdoor, start shifting that a little. Start looking at other tactics that you can use in that. But really, what generationally, we've seen digital go up all across the board. That's a cost-effective way. If you can't afford the TV and radio, look at the streaming radio, look at OTT, look at digital aspects of those traditional sides that can still get you the eyes, but maybe you can do it more in a cost-effective way and be able to do it in that manner. And then I'm going to go back to what Brad and Stephen said. The brand, that what you're putting out of empathy and help and understanding cannot be underrated right now. If you are going out there just sell, that's not going to work as well as we're here to help. We're here of empathy. We understand. That's what's getting the most traction. And so keeping that in mind of not just where your placement is, but knowing what your message is with that placement.
Awesome. Very good. Mary Ann, if I'm at home and I am writing all of these wonderful thoughts down and I write down OTT, what do I write down that stands for?
That is over the top television. So that
Over the
is
top.
your Hulu, that is your streaming TV, that is your Roku. That's what OTT is. So it's
Perfect.
a little bit of the connected TV. Connected TV just means it can stream, but OTT is all those other pieces that go with it. Sorry for the and
Awesome.
media. We have so many acronyms. So at any point, just interrupt me.
No, that was great. That's awesome. Thank you so much. Lori, we're going to come back to you now. A lot of businesses are thinking internally and looking at themselves. You know, one thing we hear right now is messaging. So my question for you is, how does a company decide what their messaging should be?
A great question. And I'm really going to be piggybacking on everything that's been communicated from Brad, Stephen, and Mary Ann around trust. But more importantly, the message is around safety. So right now, as businesses are opening up, it's extremely important to communicate what your intentions are from a safety perspective. That's both internally with your employees, but also externally with your vendors, your clients, your strategic partners that you're working with. Some best practices that we've been hearing about recently are to create a document that you can send to people in advance of them coming to your office saying, these are the safety measures that we have in place, just standard guidelines or they're required, whatever it is, to minimize any confusion and make it more comfortable for someone to start, having those in-person meetings. The next thing that I want to say around brand positioning and messaging right now is because things are constantly changing, you have to be constantly evaluating what it is that you're communicating. Just as Mary Ann was saying, you don't want to be selling. You want to be helping to solve the problem and show compassion. And if your brand has been focused heavily on a very specific audience and you're trying to, let's say, for example, sell luxury vehicles, you don't want your message to be around all the bells and whistles and add-ons. You want to talk about the safety of the vehicle right now. So you may need to be repositioning your messaging, but I'd say more importantly, you need to be reevaluating it consistently right now, focusing on safety and focusing on building and creating that trust.
Awesome. Awesome. Things that really stand out to me are communication, consistency, safety, trust. Very good. Awesome. Thank you, Lori. All right, let's round out our second section here with you, Stephen. You know, you've produced hundreds of podcast episodes and video casts over the years. So I'm curious, what is your secret to producing high valuable content consistently across multiple channels?
So I'll answer that in two ways. First is having a team of experts who are highly trained. We've used this time over the last 4 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever it's been, to take advantage and double down on new skills, practice those skills, implement those skills, using ourselves as guinea pigs for those new skills. And so it's just an ongoing evolution of skills training. So that's the first thing. Having a team of experts, and anybody on the call can, certainly, or on the session can develop that if they choose to. So that's the first thing. The second thing is recognizing that being aligned with and being disciplined with niche point of view and cornerstone content is in and of itself going to help you produce content. And here's what I mean by that. Is that we all know that this takes a lot of time and resources and so forth. And if you're aimlessly wandering through the wilderness trying to hit a target that is constantly moving, it becomes increasingly harder to be able to do that and to be able to do it effectively. But if you know exactly who your niche is, and you know exactly how you're going to be helpful to that niche, then it becomes easier because you're able to develop a content calendar that doesn't move. Right? You're able to ask your audience, one audience, what is it that they would like to learn? And then you're able to put a rhythm or a system in place that creates that consistent cornerstone content over time. And it's just easier to do that because you're super focused. So like choosing a lane and staying in that lane is going to help you be that much more efficient from a production standpoint. So your team of experts know exactly what they're going to do on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and you're not constantly ripping the rug out from under them and saying, well, I know we were going to pursue that niche last week, but this week it's this niche. And then that just wastes a lot of time.
And I have to imagine that, much like your previous answers, this takes time to develop. Would you agree?
There is no fast way to become an expert. That's the antithesis of an expert.
Right.
It just doesn't happen. Right. There's a reason why med school and internships and all of that is an 8 to 12 year path and journey. Right. There's a reason why there's law school and internship and working as a clerk and paralegal and there's a graduation process. There's a maturation process in the field. It doesn't happen overnight. And I think oftentimes business owners think, well, I'm just going to throw out a podcast and therefore all the leads and revenue are going to come with it. That's an unrealistic expectation. It takes time to plant the flag.
So my assumption was correct. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Correct.
That is great. No, and I really appreciate everyone's insight. What you all just discussed is very timely, right? And it's very in the moment. And so I almost kind of want to switch gears a little bit, and I want to think a little bit more futuristic, right? So we're going to take a lot of the same topics that we just discussed, but I want to look, into your crystal ball a little bit and try and kind of give us some insight into what the future might hold. So Mary Ann, let's kick it off with you. Very simply, what is the future of media buying?
I think we work with agencies all over the country and advertisers all over the country. And what we're starting to see paving the way is that digital is resilient. We're seeing more and more that the consumer numbers are showing us that generationally, no matter who you're trying to reach, digital is going to be an option for where you want to be. But definitely seeing restructure of media plans as a whole and thinking in that manner of how do we do the traditional side and how do we do the digital side to best marry together, and how do those work together, and how do we make sure that we're getting the right thing so that they're not conflicting or we're not working against ourselves with what we need. And how do I maximize that budget? That is a key thing right now that we're going to see more than ever, of how do I make sure, and from the agency side especially, and for other agency owners that are listening on the media team, is how are you going to make sure that you are maximizing to the end? I think that we're going to see clients question commissions and different things on the media side and how agencies are paid for with that. So that's a total different realm, but that's something with clients specifically. Programmatic placement on the digital side is going to be very important as well. That's going to be a big shift of how we can see and bid and getting ads out there and display and OTT and video in various areas. And then one thing I really want to hit on too is how much more important earned media is also. Don't just think about the paid media side. We have to think about the earned media side. And what do we do to make sure that we're getting those things out there for our clients as well as for brands as a whole? If you're an individual brand, the earned media side is just going to be as much as an importance as the paid media side. We have to think that branding and that empathy and those things along those lines. So there's going to be a shift in both earned and in paid media.
Awesome. Very cool. Very cool. And I know that we will have resources to be able to connect with you, Mary Ann, as well, if people would like to certainly discuss and learn more. Awesome. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Brad, I want to kind of look to you again here. How should associations, or even more specifically your clients, how have they prepared for the future?
I used to tell clients all the time that it would be great if, as we're going through these rebranding projects and repositioning projects with them, wouldn't it be great if we could just stop the world and go and do that and then spin it up again and take off? Well, guess what? The world is stopped right now. This is an absolutely perfect time for any organization to be looking at who they are as a brand, how they've positioned themselves, for them to look internally at their culture, go through some cultural identification exercises and make sure that they're still aligned to the values of the organization, so that as we do come out of this, whether that's sprinting or crawling. We are not sure yet, but as we do come out of this, you're positioned appropriately for the future. So this is a perfect time right now to do some internalization, some homework, if you will, of your organization to determine what those values are and how your brand is specifically positioned. So spend some time doing that. That's going to make you much better when you're out 6 months from now in marketing in the future. So really spend some time to do your homework and internalize a bit. And don't kid yourself that things haven't changed. Your employees are working harder than ever. I mean, it is difficult to be at home 24/7, 365, especially when you have 2 or 3 children that you're watching over. And it's not going to get easier anytime soon because our summer camps have been canceled. We don't have summer athletics in this area. They've been closed and canceled for the summer. So we're going to be spending a lot of time being parents, and that balancing act that your employees are doing has really caused them to pivot and look at some of their values and where that work-life balance is. So I think these are all awesome times to be looking at how your brand is positioned and to take account for where your employees are in that.
So you're giving people the permission to take a me day or a me business day.
I think you absolutely have to have some me time. So
yeah, absolutely. Good. That's a very, very good reminder. Thank you so much. Stephen, you've given us a lot of great insight on thought leadership. Is there a way to future-proof your thought leadership strategy?
Yeah, it's funny when you said your assumption is accurate when we just talked, this is actually the secret to the future-proofing. It really is somebody's body of work over time. And so when you look at somebody or a business owner, agency owner, because many are with us right now, the agencies that have been intentional about their thought leadership, or business owners who have been intentional about their thought leadership for years heading into this crisis are ahead of the others who aren't or haven't been. Right. And so the way that you future proof, or the way that you use a thought leadership strategy to future proof your business or to future proof the strategy, is by doing it consistently and building an audience consistently and being helpful to the audience consistently over time. But I mean, it isn't a secret. It just takes time. And
right.
So the body of work over time is the future proofing.
So I got this, Will. So what you're saying is it takes time?
It does.
Is it a fair assumption?
I also think that an important message I'm hearing is that people, especially in a situation such as this, they're going to go back to the people that they had already built trust with, right? And they had already been following and been supporting. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. And and I know we're laughing about the fact that it will take time. The reason why I'm emphasizing that is to properly set expectations, because we as a society have sort of ingrained in ourselves that results are fast. That's why P90X is called P90X and not 180X, right? That's why we see New Year's resolutions, people joining the gym, and 5 weeks later, they no longer go, because we've been wired, we have 8-second attention spans. And the reality is that this truly does take time for very good reasons. And so if we can build that discipline and so forth, you'll be rewarded if we have the right expectations going in.
Awesome. Very cool. Thank you so much. Let's round up our futuristic thinking by having Lori kind of bring us home here. So Lori, where do you see social media evolving to in the future?
Another great question, Will. Thank you so much for that. So as we already know, there's new platforms coming out every single day. Excuse me. So that's already given. I would say some of the things that are on the horizon and to some extent are already happening now are an increase in regulations and privacy and the data collection that's happening. So from a marketer's standpoint, there's a lot of great things you can do now, but there may be some restrictions in the future related to how you can market to individuals. Video is still one of the fastest growing platforms, and every single social media channel allows for it. More and more channels are allowing for the live activity. So I think this is going to continue to evolve. Chat bots on social media channels where there's automation and engaging with individuals that are visiting your page. So I think this is early adoption stage right now with any sort of automation in chat, but lots of opportunity to create efficiencies in communicating and engaging with someone who is interested in you or in your business right in that moment. The other thing I think there's a lot of opportunity around is influencer marketing, which is already big, but migrating that into the B2B space. And this actually ties in very closely with what Stephen's doing and his expertise around the thought leadership space. And I think, you know, B2B, it's a smaller audience, but you can still very much influence someone's buying decision because you've captured their trust. Something I do want to share and I think is somewhat fascinating, not necessarily a pro for social media, but so research shows that people trust the results that they see on Google more so than the information they see on social media. So I keep hearing things, you know, SEO is dead, and I disagree with that 100%. SEO is still extremely viable and I think has to be an important part of your overall digital marketing strategy.
Awesome. Very cool. Thank you so much, Lori. I really appreciate that. I do want everyone that is watching to know that at 1:50 Central Standard Time, we are going to open up our Q&A. If we get to that a little early, we will certainly do that. But we wanted to kind of try and do something a little bit different here with, 6 minutes that we have before the Q&A begins. And that's to actually allow our panelists to ask each other a couple of questions. I mean, shoot, I've been told I had a great question 80 times. I'm kind of over it. I don't need that pat on the back anymore. So let's actually open it up. And Lori, I know that when we had been speaking, you had something that you wanted to kind of kick things off with. So I'm going to give you guys a few minutes to speak amongst yourselves, and I'll just be the clock watcher.
All right. I am going to start. Brad, I'm going to pick on you. How has COVID-19 impacted our own brands and cultures? What should we be looking at from a brand perspective, not just externally, but also internally within our organizations?
Yeah, I think we've talked about that, all of us, in one way or another so far. Not to go back and revisit it all, but I do think that this is a great time for internally for us to take a look at our own brands, our own people, our employees, what we stand for, what we represent, the values that we have, and to make sure that we're being totally authentic with respect to how our brand is being shared with our publics. So it's a great time to walk through some exercises. I think I sent off a link to you with some tools that we have on our website that should be available. Just kind of a worksheet that people can download and walk through to determine what those values are and to realign as an organization their brand with where they are today. Because again, let's not kid ourselves. This has been some pretty trying times for everybody. So for us to get through this unscathed without some sort of change is probably not going to happen. And I think we're going to continue to see change in the business environment moving forward. I realistically don't believe that in the next 3 months, we're going to see ourselves back to normal. I think we're going to see businesses now doing business virtually. They've determined that people can work from home and they can do it in a productive manner. So, I think there will be businesses that are going to be shifting the ways that they do business because of some of the things that have happened because of COVID-19. Again, for membership-based organizations and associations, we're hoping the survey that we do, the research study, is going to share some of that information. So if anybody's interested in that, I'll be happy to make some post up on our website or share it with you. Toss me an email and I'll make sure that you can get a copy of the survey when it's released in August. But that's going to share with us what members are thinking about, what they're looking at as far as what they value from those associations as well. And some of that translates directly back to how a consumer is going to interact with businesses too.
Nice. Thank you, Brad.
Mm-hmm.
Brad, do you have a question?
I do. Thanks. I appreciate that. I've been sitting here thinking about it for a little bit. Mary Ann, this one I'm going to direct to you. I just saw from IAB, the Interactive Advertising Bureau, that they shared that there was a drop in advertisers by, I think it was 24% in March, and that's increased to where people are pausing their campaigns, and it's increased to like 37 or 38%. It seems to me that means there's some inventory available.
Yep.
I mean, what would you be recommending to your clients with respect to perhaps placing those buys or renegotiating some of those buys?
Thanks, Brad. No, for sure. The things that we are seeing and with our clients, with our agency clients, our direct clients, is going back and looking at what inventory, because inventory is an all-time high of availability, you have the opportunity to go and renegotiate. And then back in the digital side, yesterday I was just looking at some programmatic stats that came out, and on the video and on the display, the bidding is it's not as competitive as we've seen in the past. Because everything's been paused, because everybody is shifting their budgets, because people don't know what to do, they really are making sure that that availability is there. So the opportunity to renegotiate is right now. And keeping that in mind, and Brad, I want to hit back a little bit on what you were talking about of internally. Consumer behavior has changed so drastically. And if there's one thing that I can just emphasize in this is that long term, that will have an effect on how media is and how ads are going to be placed and how consumers are going to receive those ads. And are these things long term? We don't know yet, but there's some states that have been in this 10, 11 weeks. We know it takes 21 days to create a habit. We're way past that. We're past the point of creating habits in ad consumption and how we're doing it. Our personal habits have changed. I mean, Brad hit on it, of the fact that, my husband and I work full time, and we're full-time teachers right now, and we're trying to figure out everything else with the kids in the house. The other day, I felt like I was in a train station because all of us were on a Zoom call at once. And those are the things that we're just all trying to implement and carry through. But that will change also when it comes to our ads and our placement, and how are we reaching our consumer with that strategy. And we have to think so strategically, but I can't emphasize enough how much of the opportunity is right now, because vendors are hungry for the money right now. They are scared that there are some vendors that are scared they're not going to be able to have their doors open, and that's throughout the country. So now is the time to renegotiate those rates, look at those rates, have conversations with your vendors, have conversations with your agencies about it, and really look at the most strategic way for you to look at placing that media, but really the opportunity to be able to shift that budget and reduce that budget and get more out of your budget than you have before. Thanks, Brad.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
My question is for Stephen. Stephen, we've seen some increase in podcast consumption. What does that look like for opportunities when it comes to thought leadership? How does somebody really take advantage of that as they're looking at their thought leadership?
I think at the macro level, audience is getting bigger, or at least the potential for audience is getting bigger. So I think about, and like, is this the time to get in? We're hearing about, that podcasts have become super saturated and all of that, which is actually not true. So there could be no better time to get serious about planting the flag. In fact, to add some teeth to some data points to what you're asking, May 21st, so I think that's next week, Thursday, May 21st, the Infinite Dial 2020 report comes out from Edison Research and Triton, which is really like the hallmark study in this space. They've been doing it now for, I think, almost 20 years. And so I would encourage everybody to attend that webinar, download the report. So again, that's Thursday, May 21st, which will show the trends in podcast consumption, and as well as devices and demographics and all of that. So comes out every year. They do a phenomenal job, but this now more than ever is the time to get serious about thought leadership.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Lori, I apologize. We're not going to have time, but I will continue to ask you hundreds of questions every day. So you'll get so as everyone, we are now going to open it up for some Q&A. So please, if you have a question for any one of our four phenomenal panelists, now would be a great time to start typing that into the Q&A box. while everyone is coming up with a phenomenal question for them, I do want to remind you that everything that we discussed today, all of these great resources that our panelists are providing, contact information on how to get a hold of them and become connected with them, can be found at keystoneclick.com/owners secrets. Owner secrets. We did put that in the chat as well, so you can certainly access it from there. And so I tell you what, unless we get someone who has a question, Stephen, you might as well just ask Lori a question.
Okay, so we talked about trends in social and an audience being, or the consumption of social going up. Do you have any advice, any recommendations as far as the context of that content? Like what should we be sharing on social in order to be helpful, to Brad's earlier point?
Sure. I mean, one of the biggest things that I'm always constantly an advocate for is really understanding your customer. The better that you can get inside their head and understand what is the biggest pain that they have, and that you're able to produce content that helps them solve that problem, that's gonna put you in that trust box right away. So I like to ask my clients, our clients, what are the top questions that people are asking you? And if you're even, the next 2 weeks, just keep a running list of every single question that's asked from clients, from prospects, from anyone you're having a conversation with. Chances are very high that someone else is asking that same question, either going to Google or whatever it is. But if you're able to provide the answer on social media and be a resource to someone, they're going to want to continue to follow and engage with your content and potentially even share the information that you're providing.
Smart.
Awesome. Very great. I tell you what, during that time, we've actually had a couple of questions come in. So I'm not going to call on anyone directly. I would like you guys to just politely say, I'll take this one, or you can each have a little bit of snippets for it. But our first question has to do with agency cost of operation. And we were presented with an analogy. We have a bus, but with the decline in ad spend, we only have 2 passengers. How have agencies on this call managed this reality?
Parked the bus.
I'm sorry?
You parked the bus.
Parked the bus.
I'll take it. I mean, I think it's a very difficult situation that we're all in. I mean, I think we're all struggling in some way. I know personally, and I'll be totally transparent and share that our business is down probably 25 to 30% from where our projections were for the year. And we simply have to manage to that. We simply have to manage to the dollars that are coming in the door. And I think that's a challenge to do.
We're seeing on our end, people starting to outsource things that they can't keep in-house anymore. The increased calls that we are getting are people that are outsourcing their media instead of keeping it in-house. That's the sad reality of what we're all facing, is keeping people employed or having to shift people into different directions just to make sure that we're all surviving through this.
One of the things that I've been recommending to individuals who are lost some business but are fearful to get rid of some people at this time, it's a great time to focus on your business and realign, reposition their duties to be, giving them the opportunities to create the white papers and the videos and really beef up your social media, redo your website. So maximizing their free time to really help position you for what's coming ahead in the next, 3, 6, 9, 12 months.
Will, I have super smart friends. I have nothing to add to that.
Perfect. Yeah, me either. Me either. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the question. Let's keep moving into our second question here. So, we are going through phases of what's appropriate for messaging. Where do you all think that we are now, and where do you believe we are going?
I'll start with that. I think it really depends on where we are. Like I said earlier, you have to be evaluating what information you're putting out there consistently because things are changing consistently, and keeping a really good pulse on what's important to your customer is going to help direct the type of information that you should be pushing out there. So if you're an agency, help your clients get inside the head of your customer by conducting research and surveys, and just having the conversations and hosting these meetings to get a feel for, you know, what's important to them right now. So it's something that we have to be evaluating constantly right now.
I think too, on the advertiser side and the client side, A/B testing is actually really important right now, of us testing that messaging and seeing what is sticking to the consumer and our specific target consumer. I hit a little bit on the programmatic side, but the difference with programmatic is we can reach behaviors, not just demographics. And that is a great prime place to really do that A/B testing.
I think the thing that I would add to that is when we know what the topics are and where we can be helpful, it's having the courage and the discipline to actually go an inch wide and a mile deep on that topic, and not treating things as surface topics. That being, as Edelman has said in their report, research report, put on the educator hat, be the trusted advisor, and teach with depth around that topic, because that's where you can be the most helpful. One, find the right topic because your audience said so. And then two, take that seriously and teach for hours if necessary on that same topic to really show that you want to be helpful. That's how you do that. It's not a surface thing.
I took the question a little differently and saw it more in phases of how do we move out of this, or how do we transition out of this, which made me think of the Sinclair report, which I know you all are familiar with, which was a study that was done based in China to kind of give the framework for how they moved through some of these stages. And I do think right now we're still in that showing sensitivity stage. We cannot go back to business as normal. And I think it will be some time before we're back to business as normal. You know, I don't know what that looks like. I think we just have to be looking at this on a day-to-day basis to keep our finger on the pulse of what's happening. I know that in our agency, we have been monitoring the governor's press briefings on a daily basis. He's on air 2:30 every day. We're taking notes and sending those out to our clients to try to be helpful and let them know what's happening so that we can stay on top of what's going on within our communities. And if we can do that, it's going to better allow us to position ourselves appropriately when we can start getting back to normal and change our messaging and our content based on the things that are going on around our communities. And, you know, we may see another outbreak this fall. I mean, you all have heard the same things that I'm hearing. So, you know, I don't know that there is any clear path at this point as to when that next phase will be there and we can change our messaging accordingly. I think it's simply, again, having to stay on top of it and being very sensitive to what's going on and crafting your messaging appropriately.
Absolutely. No, that's really great insight from all four of you. Thank you very much. You know, we have something that I think would be considered a good follow-up to that. And, you know, the question here is, what consumption trends do you all think will decrease as people begin to come in media will remain?
Maybe I can help here, Will.
Did you lose me?
We lost you a little.
So I think the question is, what consumption trends will decrease as people end of interest?
Please do.
Or what our intake of media, will our intake of media remain the same, and how should we adjust?
I'll take that question first, in the sense that I do think that we have created consumer habits that won't change. Digital's resiliency has proven through this that that's going to stay. One thing that I will say that we will see a huge increase of consumption once it comes back on will be sporting events. And that'll be something that where we'll go back into our old trends, but it'll be more important than ever. People are going to be fighting over those ad spaces and being able to get on there, or at least they should be. The numbers are going to be through the roof. The other day, I'm a huge Philadelphia fan, and my son is yelling behind me, "Go Phillies, go Phillies." I'm like, "There's baseball on? What's on? What's on?" And I start freaking out. And he's watching the 1993 World Series on YouTube, but we're that everybody is. People are hungry for those types of live events that we haven't had. But behaviors have changed and habits have been creative. Online shopping is going to continue because now we're more happy to do it with anything that we've had any of working from home or any resilience or fear of doing. We've now shattered that fear, and now we've realized it could be a reality. And so that consumer behavior is going to be there. So we have to look at those tactics of digital that are going to stay and be resilient in that. News is going to stay resilient. We'll see a little decrease in news just because of the fact that as people start getting back into their normal lives and once they start feeling comfortable. But we will have a permanent shift in consumer behavior and in media consumption on how people are consuming that media.
I'll add to that. And I think it's interesting that alternative media sources are increasing and continuing to increase. You know, my mother, who's 81 years old, 82 years old, she'll never go back to network television again, I bet.
Right.
I mean, I can see them canceling their cable service and spending their time on Hulu and Netflix. So I think, you know, we've got some generations here that have been very comfortable with those alternative media venues. And we also have some generations that were kind of experimenting with it where now they're ingrained in it. So as a Netflix stockholder, I am so excited to see Netflix continuing to grow. But I do think that we're going to see a lot of those generations that may have been less apt to try some of those other media outlets. They are using them and will probably continue to use them after this.
To add to that, we've seen an all-time high of cord cutters that are getting rid of their traditional network television. They're going the Hulu route, they're going the streaming route, they're getting their news online, they're going to the local news to stream it. So you're spot on, Brad.
Awesome. How am I coming through right now?
Good.
Nice. Nice. All right, very good.
I want to know who's going to win. You guys are probably too young to remember The Bachelor.
I'm sorry?
Right?
The Bachelor?
Uh-oh.
This is where it goes downhill.
We do have another question.
I don't have any idea what's going on.
Yeah, we've got a couple more questions. I'll just jump in and say, you know, obviously we're past the time, but if anyone wants to stick around, we'll get through these questions. I think there's some great questions here. But thank you to those that have jumped on. Will, are you good now? You want to take the lead on the questions, or?
I hope so. I'm going to say them quickly so that way they don't get caught up with one another. No, but I do. I want to thank everyone so much for joining us here today. This has been an awesome experience for me. I have no idea if this is working right now or not. Classic Zoom. But no, I'm actually going to allow the four of you to answer these questions amongst yourselves, and then that way we know that it's coherent for those at home. Thank you for a wonderful experience, and I will still obviously just stick around and listen in.
So we got a question about cold calling. It was definitely somewhat seen as ineffective pre-COVID, and I've actually been reading a couple articles on this, but does it have a place now?
I'll jump in on that one. And although I have done a ton of cold calling earlier on in my career and, you know, was okay at it, didn't have any fear around it. I just think that now today, even before COVID, that it had less of a place. And just because of the importance that we all put on relationship and privacy and protecting our time and busyness and all of that. So do I think it has a place now as part of a biz dev strategy? No, I don't think that it does. What I do think that it has absolutely I think we're so ingrained now in permission based, that I think this is a wonderful opportunity to continue to build out content strategy and ask permission in order to schedule calls and so forth. And being aligned with helping and not selling, that this is the time that you want to be helpful. And then at some point when you feel that you've established trust, to make an ask, to have a call, I think is great. But we all get so many phone calls every single day, and they're just spam calls. I think that is not something that we should be investing our time toward.
It goes back to having the authority in what you're talking about, right, Stephen, and making sure that you're helping and not selling. And I think that's where, if all of us focus in that way, that's where we'll survive better than on the end of, if we're just calling just to sell something. That's where you're not going to get the return that you hope for.
And think about it from your own perspective, right? None of us want to get that call.
Right.
You just don't. You
Especially
don't
right
want to
now.
be interrupted in your day.
I have a
Right.
gatekeeper.
Exactly.
I don't answer the phone for that very reason, because I don't have time.
Right.
Well, I'll carry that a step further and even talk about LinkedIn and people connecting with me on LinkedIn. If you're not providing me some thought leadership, if you're not providing me with some content that I can absorb from you and learn from you, it's a pet peeve of mine for people to connect with your LinkedIn and immediately for me to get a chat from them saying, hey, I see we're in the same business and I'd really like to talk to you about how you're doing your sales lead generation.
Hmm?
I have no interest in having that
Yeah, I see. I see we both wear socks. Look at the commonality. Don't you want to buy what I'm selling? No.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to what we've been preaching, which is trust.
Right.
We're going to have a conversation with someone, potentially do business with them because we've established trust.
Now, somebody in the chat said, what about mail outs? And that's something that, again, I think your message has to go back to what you're offering to help. Same thing with email. Sure, we have a high, like Lori was saying, high consumption of open rate on things. We've seen on the end of, in the political world, people are reading more mail than usual too. So it's all about what your message is going to be with it. If you are just selling, you're going to have a harder time. But if it is that authority and that position of thought leadership that you're coming from, I think it's a little bit different.
Nice.
Just be genuine. I think even if you're reaching out to me on LinkedIn and you want to try to sell me something on LinkedIn, I would rather know that right up front and just say that.
Right.
Right.
Be vulnerable with me, be transparent. Don't try to cloud it in some other way or position it in some other way. Just be honest, direct, and genuine with what you're looking for. And I promise I will be honest, direct, and genuine back to you. So
nicely stated. All right, we've got one more question here. If someone is looking to pivot or evolve their business to better align to today's changes, but also wants to focus on a niche, where do you recommend they stay in terms of evaluating and direction for marketing changes?
That's a great question. I'll jump in there first if you guys don't mind.
Sure.
I think it starts in a couple of different ways. First, you and your team evaluating commonalities, you and your team evaluating some of the strategies, recommendations, stories that you tell consistently over time, and seeing what you notice for patterns. Seeing also where you've been really successful in serving some clients and maybe where you've kind of struggled, right? So where have you really served clients really, really well and you've got great success stories and you find yourself telling the same story or similar stories over and over again because they're relevant to that audience and they're helpful to those clients, and seeing some commonality in those strategies. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is asking clients and or prospects where you can be more helpful. And through doing some of that research, and that doesn't mean that it has to be a 10 to 12 week project. That means that that's probably something you can do in pretty rapid planning, maybe a week or less. But by gathering that level of data, you'll be able to see the commonalities pretty fast and then be able to start to go down that path.
And I'd add to that, once you find that commonality, then do what you would tell others to do. Start your marketing is just start doing what you would advise others to do, of what social media posts, what podcasts are you looking at, what videos are you going to record. Just take your own medicine in that sense, and don't be afraid to do it. I think that's the hardest thing, especially on the agency owner side. A lot of us are kind of afraid to get out there and be out there and say things, but in reality, you have something to share. And I think when we all come from that mindset and that heart of genuine sharing, that's when you're going to see people want to be with you and talk with you and really share what your thought leadership is.
Amen.
I would add to that it's important to find a niche or clients that have shared values as you and your organization as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not suggesting that there are some industries that have different values, but we all have different values. But not going to call anyone in particular out, but I think making sure that there is at least mutual respect or shared respect for the values that you have as an agency, and look for others who share share those same values. I think that's going to be important and will lead to a much longer partnership with whoever it is you're working with, no matter what industry they're in. So make sure that you're very comfortable and very clear with what your values are as an organization, and look for others, hopefully within a niche that you could go after, that have those same shared or at least respect for those values.
Awesome. Thank you so much for jumping on our panel today. This was so much fun. It was recorded, so we'll share it out there. I hope everyone has an amazing weekend and take some time for yourself. And thank you to all of our attendees.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day. Bye.